Okay everyone, so for this video we're going to dive a little bit deeper into WordPress and learn about posts and the block editor and kind of how to use some of this stuff. This video is for people who just got started with WordPress, maybe don't know anything about it, for beginners, and just kind of to show how you can edit your posts, how you can add stuff, how you can arrange content, and we're going to look at some of the settings within posts. So before we get started, as usual, I like a joke. So for today's joke, I ordered an egg and a chicken on Amazon. I'll let you know. Okay, hopefully I thought it was funny, but all right. So we've got posts, okay? By default, we have the hello world post. So we'll just go in and play with that and see some of our options. So by default, we have a title and some text. This is the new block editor. So if you see this feature, you can click that and we can add blocks. You can look at the structure of your post, and you can see kind of how the navigation of all the blocks are laid out. So as we add more blocks, we can look at that. Here, what we can do is we can preview a post. Now, I like to have two tabs open, one with the post that I'm viewing, and then here for the admin, so I can kind of switch back and forth. I don't typically use the preview feature. You can click on it, and you see what it does is it adds, this preview ID and all this other stuff. And I tend to run into trouble sometimes when, maybe I'm showing a client or doing a demo, and the preview might not work as expected, or you've got a custom block. So the idea is if this was a live site and you wanted to, add a test, I want to preview that so no one else can see it, but yet I can see it. There's just been some weird inconsistencies with that, so something to be aware of. So that's the preview setting. If you hit update, this will obviously make it live, so when I come here and refresh, then we'll see those changes and they're permanent. Now we've got settings here. This kind of toggles the block section and the document, but here we even have more options, and I think this is kind of, if you can't find what you were looking for with your posts, maybe you've upgraded WordPress and you can't seem to find some things, you might have to take a look in here. So we've got this top toolbar, and all that does is when we're toggled here, if I'm selecting our block, all this stuff is shown up here. So if I turn this off, now all that stuff's shown here. So that's all that kind of feature does, is toggle where that's displayed. So if you have a bunch of different blocks and you find it's getting in the way, maybe up here in the toolbar is a little better for you. The spotlight mode, I don't know that I really like this feature, but to each their own. So this basically, as you can see, I'm not selected on this block, but when I am selected, it kind of focuses it, and it just changes the opacity here of what block we have enabled. Then we have full screen mode. Obviously, full screen, that's great. Then we get into some of these more technical ones here with code. You can see what the code actually looks like. So if you want to write things in HTML, you can. These little HTML comments, that's specific to WordPress and how the block editor works. So if you remove that, it'll kind of break the block. I guess we can just try that and then go back and see, how exactly that does it. So it converts it back to what we call the classic block. So this is a good point here. If you've got an existing page or post and you've upgraded to WordPress and you're using the new block editor, by default, all your posts are going to have this old, what they call classic block. So in order to kind of switch that back, you need to select convert to blocks. When you do that, and in this case, since we've kind of already broken the way that format works, you'll probably have to go back in and edit that as HTML and then fix that section. So let's try this. Okay, so now we've gone there. Now let's convert to blocks, and now we're back again. Okay, so that's that. Now we've got block manager, which this is kind of cool. Instead of sifting through this other block, you can see all your blocks right here. But you can also hey, maybe you're setting the site up for a client and they don't really do TED Talks or they don't need these things, you can kind of uncheck and manage the blocks this way. So that's pretty cool, and it kind of shows you an overview of all the blocks. And again, up here you can search for certain things. So I like that. That's another nice view. We can have your reusable blocks. I'll get into that maybe later. We can do more demos on that. The keyboard shortcuts, I don't have any of these memorized, but it's kind of handy if you need to quickly move blocks around or remove something. Last of all, we have options, and I think this is where some of these things can be hidden. So maybe you have an existing post, but you're like, hey, where did all my custom fields go? Well, that's, you know, unchecked by default, so you'll need to go in and enable that. You can see here it refreshed the page here, and now we've got these fields that maybe you're used to seeing in an older version of WordPress. So you can add your custom fields that way. All right, so that's kind of all those little hidden sections and whatnot, if you wanted to toggle these or change these as well. Moving on, let's go into the permalink. Now, ideally, you don't want to change this if it's a live site, and if you do, you want to create a 301 redirect, but here we can change, you know, hello world to hello. We can update that, and then if we see here, here's our hello world, we refresh. In this case, it's redirected to hello. We've got categories. So the biggest one I think I find when I'm trying to, you know, teach a client or teach someone about categories and tags, what's the difference, right? Because they look pretty similar. Well, a category, so we've got a food website. So think of a category as like a general overview section, right? So a category for food could be meat, right? Or fruit or something like that. And a tag would be, well, what kind of meat is it? Is it chicken? Is it steak? Is it something like that? Maybe you sell shoes on your website, so you know, or clothing or something like that. So a category could be shoes, and then in the tag you could specify, oh, well, the shoe is a Nike shoe, or it's size 11, or you know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the best way I can think of to differentiate the two. So categories are going to be your main global sections, if you will. So if we wanted to add a category, we could call this test and add that category. One thing I don't like about how categories are added in WordPress is once you add one here, you're probably wondering, well, what if I goobered and messed this up and added a category that I misspelled? Well, how do I get rid of this? Like, I don't want to leave this here. So what you end up having to do is go over here to categories on this side, and then right here you can kind of manage the categories. You could either rename this or delete it from this section, okay? So that's gone. Again, tags are added then in this manner. Okay, so next we have featured image, and let's go ahead and add some of this stuff. So let's select our featured image here. I've got some images saved already that relate to food. So we'll go ahead. So I'm uploading now all these images to my local site. And now we can kind of interact with these images now that they're in our media library. So if we want a picture of these drinks here, we've got some options here. We can add some alt text for the image, the title, caption, description. I typically just kind of make sure that the alt text and the title is there. I don't really do too much with these two unless caption, I guess you would. I can show you how this works. So we select our image, and now we hit update, refresh. If we've got our posts in kind of a loop, then this section here will show kind of a quick synopsis of what the post is about. It won't really be displayed anywhere on this page. Okay, for comments and whatnot. So let's try these things. Let's say if we turn these off, let's see if this section disappears here. And it does. Okay, comments are closed. So with blocks, they're a little tricky and they might be a little finicky to kind of get used to. I actually kind of had to troubleshoot something with a client and why their blocks weren't showing up. So maybe this is a good thing to show you how that works. So if you're for some reason encountering something where this add block button is grayed out and you can't check it, what you need to do, you need to go over to your profile and you need to hit disable visual editor and then try hitting update. Okay, and if you can't update, it might be because something in your profile is required and needs to be saved, like maybe you need a nickname or something like that. So let's go back to our posts and I'll show you now. So see how this is now grayed out? So it could even be because this is checked, but sometimes what you can do is check this, save, uncheck, and then go back and update again, and then refresh, and that should kind of fix or unlock whatever maybe was missing or that was needed. So maybe a little quirk, maybe a cool little hack, maybe you've come across that or not, but something to be aware of. So one of our first blocks is the heading block. So we can select that, and you notice that we can type in our heading, and if you wanted to adjust the size, you can select that here or here, but sometimes you don't see all the options. Sometimes this little editor here doesn't have everything that you want. So what you can do is, if we look over here on the right hand side, if you're for some reason on document, you can go back to block, select the block that you're looking at, and then you can see that we have more options such as alignment, the different heading sizes, if we wanted to change that there. So just because you might not see something available here or in this view, within this block section here, you should be able to see a lot more. So something to be aware of. So yeah, that's pretty neat. You probably don't want to always, you only want your H1 to be here, which is the post title. So make sure this is always H2 and below, unless you have custom markup. So good tip there for SEO purposes. You don't always have to add blocks here. If you do, it'll immediately add one below. Say we're on this block and this one doesn't exist. We can enter down and create a new block. You can add blocks from right here in this section. Say we wanted to add an image, and we've already got our images already uploaded. So yeah, now you can kind of modify like the alignment of the image. Again, you have more control here with the size of the image and what image size you want. So if we wanted to align this left, if we wanted to edit the image here, we can. So let's update this, see what we get. You can see how that's coming along. So what else? Mostly I would suggest, I mean, we can go through each one of these blocks individually, but I would suggest just looking at them, adding them, and kind of exploring it and see what's available to you, what you can do. Maybe we'll cover more of these specific in another video, so this isn't so long. We can do a part 2 of this. Let me know in the comments if you want me to cover something specifically. I'd be happy to do that. But yeah, I don't really have too much prepared with, you know, how to use each one of these. This one's pretty cool, the column section. In fact, this would be a great one to show you. So, for instance, I want this image now in this column, right? What you can do is use this little hand icon and drag and kind of put it in a, you know, specific spot that you want. So that's pretty neat. It is a little finicky though, like sometimes it doesn't work, you know, the easiest. Like if I'm trying to get this one here, well, I don't want that one, I want this one, but you can see it kind of went for the full width up here. So you just kind of have to get it right in the spot where you want it and watch for that blue line, and then that'll help drop it into place. So we can refresh this now, see that we've kind of got it in those columns. One thing about the column block, you have the option to add more columns, but you don't really have any option to give specific column width. So that's kind of something that, I don't know, I've seen some plugins to add that, but they're not very good. So that might be coming in the future though, so something to look for. But all right, I think that'll do it for this video. Hopefully you found that somewhat interesting and learned something new. Again, let me know if you like this stuff. I'd be happy to help answer questions or make a specific video. So all right, catch you in the next one. Later.